everybody. Today we are going to be talking about a very nice subject, and I think it's already in a lot of conversations. We've been having these conversations day in day out, and today we are going to just do is how AI ready data ops can make your teams more efficient and make sure that your modern data stack is up to the mark, up to the mark for your LLMs. So with us, we have Hugo Lu, who's the co-founder and data infrastructure expert. He is the co-founder of Orchestra. Thank you so much, Hugo, for joining today. I really appreciate you giving us the time.
Yeah, no, look, I'm really happy to be here. Excited to talk a little bit about data and LLMs.
Great, awesome. Moving on, I'll just quickly go through like a brief agenda. So we'll probably start with like a shift from legacy pipelines to now the modern data stack, the rise of AI first use case. Actually, what is AI first use case data ops that we'll talk about, and how Hivo and Orchestra together can make sure that your data stack is ready. And towards the end, we'll take some Q&A. So feel free to drop all your questions even while the talk track is happening in the chat, and we'll take it over towards the end. Awesome. I think let's get into it. So, Hugo, like my first question would be, what like how does the change happen? Like, what is the traditional world look like, and what are the challenges we are facing right now while we are going into the new era of data?
Yeah, no, happy to dive in. And maybe for anyone that doesn't know me, like I know some of you do, but so I'm Hugo. I'm the founder of Orchestra. You can probably guess what Orchestra does. It's like data orchestration, but kind of on steroids. Why should you listen to me? I helped build the data teams at Juul, the massive e-cigarette company in Europe once upon a time. And then I did the same thing for a much smaller company, high growth Series C fintech in London. And it's been really interesting during that period because we've sort of gone from this phase of the data infrastructure space being like super immature to having this explosion of tools. And now we also have AI use cases that all of our bosses and our bosses' bosses are all very excited about. So yeah, spend a lot of time in the data space thinking about how we build out architecture and infrastructure, and that's sort of why I'm here. But yeah, I guess Radhika, thanks so much for having me. I guess the three things which are different, like with AI versus the old world of data ops, and they're not that different, but we've got to put something exciting on a slide. I think the first one, home truth, right? Like a lot of analytical use cases are just dashboards. And now with all of that analytical data, you can combine it with like unstructured data, and you can do really cool stuff with AI workflows. So I'll give you an example. Like, we probably all work for companies that have got like PDF contracts. Like there's a lot of helpful information there that can get structured. So now when they land, we can run event-based flows to like use an LLM to pass those PDFs and then stick it in a database. And that's really helpful for like, just automating hundreds of hours of manual work. So that's one thing. The second thing would be, like ELT that is just optimized for analytics. Like these batch processes are not real time, but that example I just described, like you kind of want that to happen in real time, and that requires slightly different infrastructure. And then the final thing is obviously like reliability. I will argue, like till kingdom come, that you need very reliable systems to make analytics work. Just because your data pipeline only fails, once every 90 days, that's still not enough if the time it fails is at the end of the quarter, and that's when the finance team actually check the dashboard. 1% failure rate is still too high. But with things like agents, which are on all the time and processing PDFs constantly, or speaking to people, or taking data from one place and putting it into another, like your ERP or CRM system, like these processes need to be really quite reliable. So I think they're basically the three things. It's like latency, it's freshness, and then it's also increasing needs for like super reliable pipelines for AI use cases. They're the three differences.
Yeah, that pretty much summarizes. I remember when I joined Hivo personally, the needs and the wants what I used to get from customers was very different. And today people are expecting, an ELT to perform much better. The reliability element has come in like much more harder than ever, and companies that do the ELT have stepped up their game in all of these situations as well. Awesome. So let's go like a little bit in deep into why this rise of AI first use case happened. Like I know you like briefly mentioned that we are moving from dashboards to like LLMs and AI applications, but what do you see day in, day out, talking to your customers?
Yeah, I mean, I think one really interesting one is onboarding. So often, when a like customer signs up for something, you might need to understand like the interactions they've had with your like sales team, like what they're doing in terms of usage, and then find out maybe a bit about the person that has signed up and then centralize all of this information. So what that requires is like an event-driven workload when somebody signs up, and then you kind of take their email, like put that in as an input, and then use it to go and look up a bunch of other stuff, maybe do some like, agentic research on the web to like work out, what their company does or what their job title is. And then with all of that structured information, maybe push it back to your CRM, or if you're doing like customer 360 and using a warehouse for that, push that data to your warehouse as well. And today that's like a very manual process for someone like a customer success manager or maybe like a BDR. But automating it is really cool. And like with LLMs, you can go ahead and get lots of other stuff. The other one that I would talk about is just AI agents that you can use to automate workflows. But Radhika, I don't know what you guys see, or if you want to talk about some other use cases.
I think one of the biggest use case that I have personally seen people talk about is how they've started like, and especially SaaS-based companies have started like analyzing their churn. It becomes
Mm,
very important for people to know and predict and forecast where it is going, where their company's revenue is going, and then that's one very interesting case, and we'll probably like dive deeper into the later conversation as well. But that's a I think top use case that I see.
yeah. Okay. Nice. I mean, I have some recency bias, I guess, with the last one, but like the way I think about like AI agents for automating workflows is to say what are the really boring, time-consuming things that people do that they don't want to do. And I
Yeah.
just got off a call with a customer. They were saying that they have an agent they run on their desktop that runs like DBT tests to work out where the data quality issues are, and then based off that, it sort of passes the error messages, sends them to an LLM, like picks up the lineage from Orchestra, which we have, and then basically gives a summary of where the root cause analysis is. So instead of saying, you've got a random data quality issue with this table, it can go back and say, well, actually, that's because you've got, some overloaded infrastructure at source and source isn't populating, for example. And I think like that's really cool, especially from like the data engineering side, because I've been there as an engineer, and it's just debugging stuff is just so painful, especially when you've got like really 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 complicated models.
That's pretty amazing that people have already started building on these agents and orchestrating the boring task. It's pretty interesting to see that the industry is already like something that we have been talking about for a while now, and the industry is moving in that direction already. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
that's a
happening.
new one for me.
Yeah, I mean, if people are doing this, they're listening. Like, please drop some notes in the chat.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Uh, cool. Moving on to the next, part of it. We want to just like lay down like a brief background, what it means to be AI first data ops, and how can you probably like, turn your direction towards that line. As Hugo said, people have already started doing it. So I think Hugo, you can take it forward, tell us the experience and what that particular company also did to like be that AI first in terms of agents.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I'll take the bottom two, and then really maybe you can take the top two. But we're saying this is AI first. Really, it's just data ops, but you definitely have to do it in the age of AI. I think something that historically folks in analytics can struggle with is definitely like different environments and CI/CD. A lot of old like GUI based tools really don't lend themselves to this paradigm. Like Azure Data Factory is a good example of this. It's also quite painful to do it in things like Matillion, but they've obviously improved. But having multiple environments and sort of like CI/CD and good architecture is really a must. If you're working with streaming data and you've got agentic use cases that are picking up this data, like if you are pushing a lot of errors into production, then either internal people in your organization that need stuff will see a lot of errors, or even worse, your organization's customers will see a lot of errors. So, CI/CD is pretty robust, pretty important. And then the other thing is let's use the metadata, right? Like, think as data professionals, we know that the days of buy five SaaS tools and hire some data engineers and hope stuff works is in the past. We know that having clean metadata, like data lineage and just real-time logging of like what is going on, is really, really imperative for data engineers to do their jobs well. And today it's like with a classic old analytics stack, like Airflow, Snowflake, maybe a little bit of like ELT, like that metadata is in completely disparate locations. You've even got metadata sitting in your Git provider for when you're running your CI/CD runs. Like none of it is in the same place. And that makes debugging stuff in the age of AI really, really hard because, like that agent I just described our customer building, they're having to build an MCP server on top of Postgres, on top of Snowflake, on top of like dbt Cloud, but they've actually got a lot of this information in Orchestra already. And I think tackling this from a let's centralize all of our metadata is pretty important these days.
Awesome. And I think when it comes to like a model first pipeline, pipeline design, what we mean here is first you define your data model, right? Your schema, your structure, and your relationships before actually going into it and building your pipeline. So first, right now, with the way things are moving forward, we think that having the clarity of what's the end outcome and the end use case becomes very important. For example, if you have to build like a data agent over it, you would need to know what schema to push in, what structure to put in, and like in other words, first extracting and loading the raw data and then figuring out how to structure it, that might or might not work. But you also should start thinking about your end use case. When it comes to like iterative experimentation, like form a hypothesis, run an experiment, collect feedback, and do it quickly. And that's where I think a lot of use cases get solved with like Hivo and Orchestra, because we make sure that there's like availability there for your data quickly. And that has become like the most important ask nowadays as well. So I think, Hugo, we have one question, and it's on the same topic, so we can probably like take it as well. So when do you anticipate the holy grail of more than just identifying the problem but also fixing the problem? It's coming from that DBT example just to share.
Yeah, it's pretty close. Yeah, because we've got all the data, right? And then the final thing is just giving your agent, which is basically just a script that like runs at some point, access to to different systems. And I think that's the tricky thing from a security standpoint, because you need a really clear notion of like just like an integration, right? So I don't know, let's say you have like a service principal for a database in Azure, and you want something to be able to fix data quality issues, should you give that service principal delete access? Because then if you do, like, the agent could delete the whole database as well as just delete a couple of rows of duplicates. So I think that's the tricky thing, right? We already have agents that can do this, but the problem is they can now do too much. We want to make sure that they only do it when they have to do it, and yeah, I think that's the tricky part. But soon, like, we're very close. It's very close.
Got it.
If
Got
not,
it.
if not now already, but I'm sure someone's. I read an article on Medium about this the other day. I put it in the chat. Like, the guy was like, "I've built it, but it's kind of average. It works 70% of the time."
Yeah. Awesome. I think I read like this example somewhere online. I think it was LinkedIn only, that where like a person was building something on their prod data, and apparently the AI agent did go in and delete the whole database even after giving a lot of stop commands. And while talking about recovering the data, did not go as well as they could have imagined. So we'll have to have our guardrails there wherever we are building
Mm,
these AI agents, and then making sure that we build upon them. Awesome.
yeah.
I think moving on to Hivo plus Orchestra in action, and I think I'll take up the Hivo part, and you can pitch in for Orchestra, and we can go about it. So basically, what Hivo does is we make sure all your data from around 150 plus SaaS plus DBs and whatnot comes to your warehouse in fresh and near real time, right? As we've been discussing about it, the availability of data becomes more and more important. Hivo is that tool that will do it quick and very cost effectively as well. So that's where we think like our sweet spot is. It helps you also prepare your data for your ML and AI use cases. So embedding ML features, RAG, these are all things that we have started recently seeing. It's fully managed. So like it's 2 clicks, 3 clicks, and here's your pipeline ready. Soon enough, I think we'll be able to make sure that the agent is also building your pipelines for you on Hivo, which makes it even quicker. So this is what Hivo does. We make sure all the data is available, and and the most important thing is like in a reliable format, so that you don't have to keep on checking that if there's a data mismatch, or if something went wrong. We are very good at alerting our customers if a schema didn't match, and you can also put in your guardrails. So for example, when it comes to you just want your pipeline to run for this much GB so that you don't pass over your event quota. You can do that as well, which makes it much more flexible for you to manage your own data. I think Orchestra will help us more in terms of how to, actually visualize the data and also like orchestrate in CI/CD.
Yeah. I mean, look, you would hope so.
Yeah, for
But
sure. I know so.
yeah, I mean, look, just like at a very high level, think of Orchestra as the glue between the different parts of your stack and the workflow engine for like data pipelines and agents. So I'll give you an example. Like, let's say you're ingesting some batch data with like a Python script. You've got some streaming data. You're going to use Hivo to do that. You're going to drop it in a warehouse. Maybe that's going to form your customer 360 view, right? Maybe you're batching customer usage data from like Postgres database, and then doing a little bit of manipulation once it gets into your warehouse, and then maybe on the side, you've got a sort of agent that runs every half an hour that says, hey, find me customers that have reduced their usage drastically in the last 30 minutes, who are within 3 months of renewal. And to your point, Radhika, about churn, and then come up with a nice email I can send to them for that. So let's say like that's the problem. You know where Hivo is. Like Hivo is bringing in the data. What Orchestra is doing is orchestrating and monitoring all of that workflow. So we have like a declarative framework that means you can basically build that pipeline in minutes. You can use AI to build it. We have data quality, observability, lineage, all of the fancy buzzwords just built into the platform. It sort of just works. And then under the hood, we have a sort of like separate hypervisor-esque compute engine that you can use, not just for like Python scripts for moving data from places like Postgres, but also running like the agents themselves. And yeah, we've just found that having that sort of glue between the different parts of the stack saves people a huge amount of time, especially when you consider, how many tools and how much code and how much time you need to spend building, functionality you get in Orchestra that's just ready out the box. That's what we
Awesome.
do.
That's great. I think moving on to like a real world case study, and I'll probably start off. This is something that we see day in, day out. Um, uh, so I think real world lessons for AI native teams. What is your thought about that on that, Hugo?
Yeah, I mean, like that first point, reliability is just so key, right? It's like if you don't have like an orchestrator, like your stuff is going to fail. Like your pipelines are brittle. It's like if you're releasing software, you don't not use Git. Like you have to use Git, and that's because Git orchestrates the release of the software. An orchestration tool in this context is the release of the data. Um, so I think that's probably the biggest thing. Is it's almost like a mindset shift for some. Um, I think the other thing is just like people have got to adapt, right? It's like with the old stack, data teams spend like 75% of their time just maintaining infrastructure. Now there's not like one report they need to maintain. There's one report and 10 high value AI use cases because it can automate loads of really time consuming things. So, the cost is the same, but like the benefit and the opportunity cost of not moving quickly is massive. So I think wherever people can rely on SaaS tools that help people move forward in like a scalable way, um, now and for the next year or so at least, um, there's a lot. It's just like, people like an airline, like airlines are creating huge competitive advantages by having better better like customer experiences which are real time that have a human in the loop, plus AI, and like we're noticing that as customers. So like the time to move is now basically.
Awesome, awesome. So I think it's high time we talk about like a real time case study that we have seen together, and we have also sort of seen many of these moving forward. So there like we're going to be talking about like how a leading fintech company built like an ML ready data pipeline for smarter risk assessment. And to start off with, it was a fintech company where they had a couple of challenges with their stack, right? Like inconsistent data formats for ML models, and that was causing them a lot of delays. JSON normalization took like days instead of like minutes. And the data sources were also very fragmented.
why
So
did the why did the JSON normalization take so long again?
I think they were kind of building their own pipelines, and they had like a third party tool as well, which was creating a lot of issue for them.
Right, I see. Just like a
Yeah.
really really horrible nested JSON basically.
Yeah, exactly. So they came to us with like all of these problems, and that's when they kind of started their search of an ELT tool, and like a tool that can help us help them like create these ML models much more quicker and much more in real time. Um, so when they came down to the solution, this is how like their architecture end up looking like, where they're pushing their data sources from like S3 to Hivo and then like into Redshift, and then they are creating like orchestrating over it. So that's something that they kind of got like as a benefit, and as a benefit they were able to like have their pipelines automated in like minutes with zero maintenance. They also like I think one of the biggest use case that we solved for them was like a near real-time ingestion of like from multiple data sources. That was something that they were pretty happy with. And like hybrid schema. So one of the features that Hivo also provides you is like hybrid schema mapping, which is basically if you want us to map your schema for you, we'll do that. Like you can just plug on a button and we'll do that for you. And if you want to drop a few columns to make sure that you want to map it manually, we also provide you like an option for that where you can manually map this. And we also like kind of help them streamline a lot of their workflows and reduce kind of a lot of their effort as well. I think you can also pitch in with the orchestra impact that they can get from adding orchestra over the layer.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess maybe to add a bit more color to this use case, essentially, like the data here is being used to train a machine learning model. But that data is now also feeding into like RAG and agentic flows. So if that data isn't like getting processed reliably and frequently, then it obviously really impacts the ability for the teams to train their new models, right? It's like if the pipeline's always broken, you're going to be using a model that's trained like 4 or 6 weeks ago. As anyone that works in payments knows, the distribution of that data is pretty like not is fairly sticky, but like you want the latest data in your models. Um, so with all of this like heavily sort of like destructured JSON data, that process was just breaking all the time, and there were other data sources that we needed to bring in. So they all had to be reliably coordinated, and then after they get into Redshift, you sort of have to then execute a couple of stored procedures in order to make sure that data is clean. And then obviously after you've done that, you need to make sure that the models only get trained and deployed via SageMaker or what have you, when the data quality is reliably there. So what Orchestra is doing is just making sure that entire process happens really, really seamlessly, saving people time. We have out-of-the-box connectors with like S3, Hevo, Redshift, SageMaker in AWS. Just making sure that data is delivered reliably and on time. That's why I use an orchestrator.
Awesome. Great. I think with this, we have sort of covered this in the past slide as well. I think, Hugo, what would your suggestion be, like your final thoughts on how can people get started to make sure they can accelerate their AI roadmap?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is just like do a stack rank and work out where the biggest lift is and where the biggest impact is, right? It's like you want to be able to use the free time you have to focus on things which are really high value. And if you don't feel like you can quickly do those use cases with what you have today, then maybe it would be fun to play around with some new SaaS. I think for the agentic piece, like Orchestra is great because you basically get a way to just run any Python script with complete cataloging and monitoring and alerting just built out. Um, and I think Hevo is great for just getting the different bits of data you need all into one place, right? It's like you can just get some new data sources that you wanted to play with into your warehouse, like Snowflake, just like that, and then you can just write some awesome Python to run a cool agentic flow that does something interesting with it with Orchestra. So I think from the sort of like AI AI POC perspective. That's how I look at it. But as you guys know, we're big believers that there is no there is no AI without data, and most of what we do today is obviously helping people build out these like enterprise grade enterprise data architectures. So if you guys are looking at that, then sign up as well, obviously.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Hugo. It was great having you. I hope everybody had a fun time as well. Guys, we'll wait for a couple of minutes to and you can drop down your questions. If you have any. Oh, we have a pop-in question. So, the question is if you were starting from scratch, bracket greenfield, would you train your own model or versus RAG versus in prompt engineering?
Depends what the model is doing.
Okay, okay. If you would want to give us more input, we'll be able to help you better. So, what kind of model you would want to run? It's an anonymous question, so I'm not able to figure it out.
Yeah, fair enough. Um,
Awesome.
I'm, I'm just gonna go with no, because the models are really really good.
Got it, got it. Fair enough. We'll wait like 1 or 2 more minutes, and then we'll probably. Oh, we have another question in line. There we go.
I think it's agreeing with my answer.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Guys, drop in your questions. We'll also drop in Hugo's LinkedIn and Orchestra's LinkedIn, Orchestra sign up page as well. So feel free to like sign up for Orchestra. We'll do the same for Hugo. We just want to support you guys to make sure that your infrastructure is actually AI ready.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks so
Awesome.
much, Radhika.
Thank you so much, Hugo. I think that's with the end of question for the end of questions. It was great fun having you, and hope we could do like another part a little bit down the line when we have more examples and more real life use cases where people have already implemented what we just discussed.
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much.